Welcome back, guys. Today we'll be revisiting the grain that we created last time for Amazon. We're just going to add more conditions to make sure that the grain works properly, and we'll also be creating the custom grain for the VM for Vagrant/Kitchen. So I've got the grain that we created last time pulled up, and I'm just going to go ahead and move some of this around and use a try clause to make sure that we don't put grains without any values in there. So let's go ahead and move this inside. Let's move it inside after we've done the declaration of all of our variables, and then let's move everything here in a try statement. So try, we'll set those variables, and then we'll return all the way to the grains. Say accept. Now let's go ahead and curl a URL, just an empty terrible URL with URL lib2 real quick, and then we'll see what we get. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this on my Mac. So Python, we need to import URL lib2. And yeah, okay, so it's URL lib2, URL open, and then some arbitrary URL. So URL lib2.url open http // I don't know if I can set semicolons in there, but let's see. .com. Okay, there we go. This is what I'm looking for. It says URL lib2 URL error. We're gonna go ahead and try and catch this error. If this error is caught, then we're just gonna go ahead and return false. And if it returns false, this whole grain will be empty rather than leaving an empty cloud info that we had last time. So now that that is fixed, let's go ahead and add this, commit it, add try statement for custom EC2 grain, and we'll push to our repository. Let's log into our instance. And we'll do a git pull. There we have it. And now we can just do a salt util. Oops. So salt util sync grains dot sync underscore grains. And now we'll do a grains item. Grains.items, I'm sorry. And there we go. So CPU info. Okay, so if this is empty, which we will find out when we create the development grain, if this is empty, this whole cloud info block won't be there. Otherwise, if you have it the previous way that we had it, you'll have a cloud info block with nothing there, which I don't really want because I want to see if cloud info is actually true and it contains items in there rather than I just have an empty list. All right, so now let's move on to our development kitchen VM. Now this is the kitchen VM that's in SaltStack or just in any other kitchen VM. It's fine. We haven't moved on to the Vagrant VM just yet. We'll do that after we finish the kitchen VM. So I've got my kitchen VM up already. So yep, it's already been converged. It was converged the last time we tested it out. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go off the host name. I believe if I look at this kitchen VM, it's got a Vagrant host name, which is fine. So we're just going to search, so we're going to pull up the host name, and then we're just going to search for the word Vagrant in that host name. That should work, hopefully, for the Vagrant VM that we've created, as well as the kitchen VM that we use with the Vagrant driver on. So to do that, what we're going to do is that we're going to go ahead and create a folder here underneath the user state called attributes. Normally what we do is that when we create a custom grain, is that we have we create them here in this directory, this EC2 check, and we use some fancy Python to pull the data and then put them in our grains. However, we can't do that in this type of kitchen VM because this is inside the state. And since it is inside the state, it needs the value, the custom grain needs to be put inside the state. Now, Salt will not read Python inside the state. It'll read Jinja and it'll read Salt states. So we have to create a Jinja type Python that goes off an existing grain and create the new grain. So let's do that. So we'll call it attributes, just like I have a chef attributes, except for this is called kitchen attributes. And we will have a default file here. So from here on out, let's see. Oops, let me go ahead and make sure I set my salt state. So if there's an existing grain called hostname, we can go ahead and look that up actually. So let's do sudo salt call. We'll just do grains items. Now I'm in the kitchen VM already. What I'm doing is that I'm running salt call, which calls the local salt, and I'm passing a configuration file that kitchen uses. If you don't put this in, it's going to fail because it's going to try and use the actual etc salt config file, which will look for a master, and there is no master here. So you need to provide this temp kitchen etc salt as a configuration files and use grains.items. Now we're just looking for a grain that that has a host name already. So we can use localhost, or we can use ID, which is the ID of the minion. I don't recommend that. I recommend using fully qualified domain name. It's the closest thing to a host name. So if vagrant in fully qualified domain name, then set cloud info to set cloud info to provider vagrant. So if grains fqdn is equal to, if grains fqd, let's do that again. So if vagrant in grains fqdn, which returns that fully qualified domain name, then we set this grains here. Grains.set. Now let me double check the syntax. Salt state grains. Here we go. We're going to use this example here. We're going to use grains.present, not grains.set. Apologize. The name is going to be cloud info, and then there's going to be a value that says provider is vagrant, and that's it. Nothing more than that. All right, so let's set that. So cloud info, which we can give it that. Grains.present name, again cloud info, and value provider is vagrant. And I believe I capitalized Amazon in the last one. And then, of course, in Jinja, you have to end if, like so. Now, normally, what you want to do is that you don't want to set this in every state like this. Technically, you don't want a kitchen for every state because you're including other states, so that means you're going to have to add in list dependencies. You want a master level kitchen that reads the whole environment. So that way you can go ahead and use include statements. Like I said in my last video, is that the drawback in using this method is that you can't include any statements because the files are not going to be contained. So that makes it a little difficult. But however, this syntax that we're looking at here, this is, if we were to include this in any state or like in a base state and the kitchen VM is always going to be high stating off that state, it'll always work. So if we had another state, for example, let's say users2 or dev users or something, then we would need to repeat the syntax into that state as well, which makes it more difficult. This is why I favor the top level kitchen uh, as opposed to this individual state kitchens. But I'm giving you guys like two options here, so you guys can go ahead and pick and choose depending on what you need. So we will name this here default. And then on the init, we will include okay, so you need to have the include statements formed as a list, so you can include as many as you want in sort of one dictionary. And the folder separations are done by /. Oh, also, since this is actually in the current folder we are in, we also want to add that dot in there. So it's in the present directory attributes /default. Now you replace the slash with a dot. That's why you don't want to name a file and then put in, like, you don't want to specify the SLS and then say .sls, because then it's going to look for another file named SLS, so be careful with that. Alright, so now that we got that, let's go ahead and run a kitchen converge. And you should see it here, you see? In the changes, you see cloud info, provider, vagrant. That's how we know our grain is set. And it says out here, so set grains present. Alright, so this is the normal way of setting grains. Excuse me, let me find it. This is the normal way of setting grains. And you can do grains present, grains absent if you want to remove them. And this here, and technically we actually customized this, but we used an existing grain to customize it. We didn't really pull any data off of it, off of the system. This here, where we provide the whole Amazon instance ID and everything, that is a full-on custom grain. That one actually went into the system, curled URL, and then checked a few things and pulled the instance ID and the instance type, and then go ahead and set the grain. So this is a full-on custom grain, where this is sort of based off of an already existing grain. This is sort of based off an already existing grain and then sets a new grain. You don't have to have a condition to set a new grain at all. You can just set the new grain. Alright, so thanks for joining me. I hope to see you guys in the next video. We should be getting close to our project where we set up the new server with the SaltStack application and send our logs that way. However, that's going to take a little bit to get there, and then that particular project is going to take quite a while to finish. I do want to go through test infra and more testing before we get to that particular phase. But I'll see you guys next time.